that yes, it was generally traditional. So there wasn't an observance to the same level that I now have in my life, but we would, all the holidays were very present. Shabbat was there. We wouldn't like disconnect from our phones, God forbid. But there was a lot of the flavor and a lot of the experience of Judaism in our home, which was extremely important to my mom as a Jewish educator. We went to summer camps. We went to Israel. We're very connected to the land and to our stories. But when it came to to halakha, to like Jewish law and observance, that was really foreign to me. I learned that way, way later. And a lot of that I learned through the course of this documentary.
Right. You know what, Becky, I remember thinking back on the first scenes in the film when Gal, when it first comes up that Gal is going to marry someone who isn't Jewish. And your mom didn't have a heart attack. And it seemed like she was very, I don't know, accepting or
a little resigned maybe at that point too.
Yeah, so, and just when you grow up in a family like yours, which is a lot like mine, but when you grow up with a family like that, how, I don't know, I expected a bigger reaction from your mom. So it was like everybody live and let live.
Well, I'll tell you a secret. So when we first found out that my sister was dating a non-Jew, was dating Justin, my mom sort of said, but don't marry him. So there was that initial conversation, that's just going to be really difficult. I don't mind you dating. Let's have a different conversation when it comes to marriage. And my sister and my mom had that conversation. It happened years before and off camera. And it always bumped my mom. It just did. It was in the same way that it bumped me to the core of this isn't how we were raised. It's something in us didn't align. There was a bump. And my mom and I handled it differently. But my mom and my sister definitely had a conversation. It happened before. And by the time I got to my mom on camera, there was a little bit more of I've digested this pill. This is happening. I don't want to lose my daughter. And I'm not going to push. I'm not going to push her.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
The entire time I was watching the film, I kept thinking, well, what would I have done? Well, what would I have done? And
right.
It really made me, the film made me reach into myself and really think how, because I'm your mom's contemporary, what I would have done and what I would have said. And really, gave me a lot of, I watched it in 2 separate sittings, and I was I saw it was going in one direction, and then I was kind of surprised by your journey in the second half of the film. So
yeah,
was it only because
yeah, so was I.
Right? So 1 minute you were sitting with the interfaith rabbi, and the next minute you're at Naves. So
right.
how and I saw there was some conversation about that, but had you planned to do that anyways, or it was just really part of an outcome of the film?
Yeah, I was really present, really moment by moment. I wanted to be in my authentic journey without an idea of where this was going to go. In fact, I had walked through this filmic journey for 2 years and thought that it would end somewhere completely differently. I thought I would get to my sister's wedding and have a bunch of clarity, and that would be the movie. And my sister's wedding happens in the first act, and I have no clarity, right? And so I realized that I was really standing in my film's way, that there's something that I wasn't doing, a part of me that I wasn't exploring. And it was a really, full body experience. I was like, wow, this is if this is about me and it's my exploration and I'm the vessel for this journey, something that I'm doing is stopping it from reaching its sort of beautiful knotted ending. And I had a wonderful intellectual spar with a writer in LA who after about 50 minutes led me to sort of understand that it was me and that there was a deeper question within my question. So yeah, I start out the journey asking, why marry Jewish or marry Jewish? And I realized that there was always a question waiting to be birthed. And that question was, why be Jewish? Why even be this thing? And that really surprised me. But I knew that to answer that, I'd have to do something really bold. And it was terrifying. And I was very scared. And many of those moments were captured. And obviously, many moments also happened off camera while I'm flying in a plane to Israel. Like, what am I doing? But I really hope that people take something from that we have to make those bold steps, and they're usually in the direction of the most uncomfortable feelings.
So we have another comment. So someone said your sister's journey put you on this path, right? Do you think you would have questioned yourself had she not married not married a non-Jew? Like if if that question wasn't a question.
Such a good question. Do you know that I really haven't spent so much time thinking about that, because I've just spent so much time being in gratitude for what's happened, because I would never have really, I feel like, earned the life and the experience that I have now if I didn't go through the last 10 years. And of course, the last 6.5 years of making this movie. Do I think, look, at the end of the day, I think all roads lead to home. So probably as a seeker, and naturally that's who I am, I would have found something that would have still probably led me to question and to want to probe more. I was always very spiritually inclined. And in LA, there's a lot of seekers in LA, and they sort of always get really lost. And I didn't want to do that. And I always sort of wanted to go back to my wisdom tradition, the one I was born into. So I think that, yes, I probably would have gotten back around to it, but probably not at the same pace. This movie really forced me to get clarity. And yes, 6.5 years is a long time, but that journey and knowing that I had to finish this movie and that there was going to be an audience somewhere on the other side, it really forced me to commit, to grow, to make a choice, and to become the next level of myself. I don't think I would have done it in 6 years. I think it might have taken longer. I might have become lazy about it. I might have said, nah, not that. So this movie really escalated that journey for me.
The one thing, and maybe you can, I don't want to misquote one of the rabbis, but I'm thinking about this, so I mean, you're not alone in these thoughts. I think a lot of us kind of have these kinds of questions, like, are children marrying non-Jewish, or why be Jewish, or what? And one of the rabbis said, your sister and her fiance aren't that different from each other. Right. And that to me was like the kind of like an aha moment, because being Jewish and being Jewish is, the way I see it is probably not the way, that someone else sees it if they're in that kind of interfaith relationship. So what was, do you remember which rabbi?
It was Rabbi Deutsch. And he, I said, my sister, and they believe in, but they're of different religions. And he goes, but are they really of different religions? And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, do they really believe in different things? And I was like, whoa, no, they don't really believe in different things. They have very similar values and very similar beliefs. So, and he said, at a soul level, we can talk about that. And that's a whole other dimension of conversation when it comes to interfaith, of the anatomy of the soul and soul match, all of that. And that can get a little out there and a little, spirited. But I think to me, what he was asking, when he was also pointing for me to explore when it comes to relationships, is be with someone who believes the same as you. Be with someone, and not exactly the same, because obviously we're going to have different opinions, but who looks at the world and shows up to the world in that same way. And Judaism has, very sort of specific way that we view the world, just in general. Even just to say I'm a body and a soul is very Jewish. And some people go, no, I don't believe in that. And it's well, so what do you believe in? Just so that we can align, and then we can create a home and raise children and be able to align. So that made me ask a lot more questions about, well, what do I believe in? And what kind of partner do I want to attract into my life so that we can believe and see and create a home together that aligns? But it was a beautiful question that he brought up.
Right. That question gave me a lot of answers.
Good.
So we have some more questions.
Yay.
So let's see. What is your life like now? Can you talk about your marriage, your life in Hollywood, the aftermath of the film that took 6.5 years to make? It's a long question.
Yep.
Are you observant now? What are your Jewish practices like now? And I can repeat some of the question if you get
Yeah, we can
stuck.
start there. I think I remember most of it. My life, gosh, when I look at like I watched the beginning of the documentary and I really was very, very different. I mean, I'm still the same person, obviously. We're always the same. It's always, we're us. Um, but sometimes we put on different clothes and actually truly different clothes. And I was like a very different character. I think I was had less direction. I was very open and curious, which I still am now, but in a way that there was no real foundation quite yet. And I really wanted that. LA is, like I said, a wonderful place, and I love being there. But because there's so many other seekers and creativity and openness that, and I had a mentor who said that sometimes people's brains are so open, their brains fall out. And so when your head is so open, your brain falls out. And I appreciated that because, yeah, I wanted to be open-minded, but not
Yeah.
so open that I just didn't know what truth was. So now, after a lot of study and a lot of sitting with myself in silence and a lot of walking with the practices and the wisdom that I decided to take on, I'm still on a journey. I would definitely say I'm observant. Because that's, my practices are I keep kosher, I keep shabbat, the chagim, I cover my hair in some capacity. I wear somewhat modest clothing, I think, according to, like it's, again, there's a sliding scale. But I'm going down the to-do list, of course, right? So like modesty, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably at a 7. What do we have, right? So I'm like definitely learning and taking on and walking with some things. And that's really important to me. And I found a partner right when I got back, actually, from Israel. I was like, I'm ready to date. I was pretty clear on what I wanted, not so close-minded, but clear enough. And I wanted somebody who really wanted to walk the same walk, who wanted to be observant, but was out in the world, was creative and colorful. That was really important to me. I wanted a community that I could be a part of that valued a woman's voice, which is okay. And there's other communities that are a little bit less about that, a little bit more observant, and that just didn't resonate with me. Spent a lot of time exploring different communities in Israel during my studies. And I met my husband, Nathan, at a party. Actually, it was a bunch of our mutual friends, all Jewish, and we put together with my Moishe House micro grants an event. Thank you, Moishe House, love you. And it was like an instant sort of knowingness. He was also born in Israel and raised in America. He was also a Baal Tshuva and spoke Hebrew, but like was very Americanized. It was almost like we were really mirror souls. And dating him was different than dating previously in LA. I think you take a lot of time to sort of have fun. And for us, it was like more about like have our heads on straight. What's important to you? I didn't want to waste my time. I didn't want to waste his. I came back from this experience with, again, foundation and clarity. And I wanted to trim the fat. So showing up to dating in that way was really nice and really refreshing. And we very quickly knew that we were matched and we were engaged that following, probably within 9 months. And we were married January 5th of last year of 2020. Then COVID happened, which was a wonderful first year of marriage because we were just like, must stay in the house together. If that's ever a test, COVID was one. Quarantine was the best. And we actually launched a production company together. And I really believe God is like the ultimate director. And I was the producer, just taking the directives. And we started to get some really wonderful work in the Jewish community, creating media together. And here we are, almost 2 years later. We have a daughter. She's 12 and a half months. And really just excited. We actually currently live, I'll let you on, if you're not following me on social media, then you don't know this, is that we live in an RV. We decided to pack up our apartment everything's in storage. We took just the essentials and our then 5-month-old baby and got this truck and a fifth wheel. So it's a 2-bedroom, 42-foot big old thing that we hitch onto the back of a truck and said, if we don't do it now, we're going to be just stuck in our house in LA. Let's go. And we drove across straight through middle America to see my family. We're here in Pennsylvania for another week. Been here for 3 months. And it's been just such an awesome experience. But again, when you talk about just showing up in the world, if he didn't see the world like I did and didn't value exploration and creativity and self-expression, while also making sure that Shabbat and kashrut and all of our observance was able to be where we are, I would never be here. So it's really fun to find a partner in this way. And I think I have this journey to thank for really leading me in this direction.
Wow. Okay, there's more questions, but I just have to ask a question about the RV because I've been looking at converting vans.
Yeah.
But are you going to drive back in the RV? You're going to take it back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going down south. We're going to Tennessee and Georgia and Florida, and then we're going to go straight across the south back to LA, and then we'll see. So it's been 6 months living full time in an RV, and we're probably going to do at least another 6 months and see how it goes.
Okay. Any Walmart parking lots?
No Walmart parking lots, but I will say you should look into Elks Lodges. That is the greatest find if you're looking to drive across the country and you want a place with a bunch of stuff. Also, feel free to message me or email me and I will give you all of the tips and tricks. Anytime, anyone.
It's so cool. Okay. So back to the questions. At the beginning of your sister's relationship, was there a discussion about her future husband converting? So this was the second question, but I'm asking that first. Then we can ask the next question.
So he says it, Justin says it in the film where he says, I'm not going to convert because I'm not Jewish. And it was like the most simple soundbite. And I believed him. It's like he just knew in his soul he wasn't Jewish, so he wasn't going to convert. And that was kind of it. I think my sister, and as you see how she shows up, she's not one to pressure. My sister she's a psychiatrist. She is the most wonderful, understanding human being and holds the most compassionate space. I couldn't ever see her being like, you must convert or we go. And even just pushing that too much beyond the fact that for Justin, he wasn't Jewish. And that's all it takes. I have friends that have gone through the conversion process because they felt like deep inside, I'm Jewish. I feel like I'm a Jew. I think it's such a beautiful, I get chills just thinking about that journey. It's really so beautiful. But he didn't feel that. So he didn't. And we had the conversation sort of about like, and you see it in the movie. So what does that mean? How do you raise kids? How's the home going to look? There wasn't a lot of clarity. And I think that discussion with the interfaith rabbi really inspired them. And I was really honored to be a part of that inspiration because like dating and marriage and all that stuff, I think a lot of the times we wing it. We just kind of go with it and we assume the other person's a good person and we'll just sort of, when we get there, we'll talk about it. Who wants to talk about that stuff? We'll get there later. And I'm glad that I was like a nudge enough to get them to talk about it sooner.
Okay. So I'm going to go back. I have another question, but now I have to ask this question.
Totally.
Does your sister have children yet? And how are they being raised if she doesn't?
No, they don't yet. And we've had this conversation, and I think, this is like my sister's personal life. So this isn't stuff I can really weigh in on quite yet. Maybe that'll be American Birthright Part 2. But it's definitely a conversation that we continue to have now that she sees how I raise my daughter and the things that we do in our home. And even, during my pregnancy, Justin and Gal would come over for Shabbat often. And I loved that. I loved being able to explain Kiddush and to explain why we don't talk after we wash our hands in between that and bread, making the hamotzi blessing on the bread, and to just have them be a part of that experience and to bring Justin into the experiential part of Judaism more and more and more, so that when children do come, that they're inspired to even just to ask us questions. I think the biggest thing for me is that, and I've heard this said, and I will continue to say it, is that no one ever changed because they were judged. So I as much as I sort of was tough with my sister, I apologize to both of them. Joe's like, just to be clear, I apologize if ever you felt judged by me. I have concern, I have love, and I am here, and I am Israeli. So I'm going to be a little loud about it, but just know it all comes from love. And I think we all knew that. And so now when they have questions, or there's a, potential this, or how do we celebrate that, or what's going on for Yom Kippur, or what is this holiday about, I love that they call me, and I love that they feel like they can, so that when children do come into the equation, that conversation is at least an open book and an open door, but not yet, to be continued.
Okay. I heard a few years ago, I was at Cage when Cage still existed. And I heard a lecture by Haviv Reddick. I don't know if you're familiar with him. And he said something to the effect that American Jews are like Protestants. You could be a Methodist or Episcopalian and you go and you do your religious thing in your church, and then you come home and you're like, with your family, or you're together. Like, it doesn't matter. And I feel like your film is so important because I think it does matter. And I don't know if that statement has any effect on you, but I really feel like in America, like it's like, what are we doing? Like, where's our how do you stay and be Jewish in America? So
heavy. It's a really big question. It's a really big question. And it's a big ask for people to, one, be a part of this very countercultural religion that in America, just doesn't necessarily go by the same calendar or the same Holy Sabbath day. And it's tough. It's like not built in. And that's okay. That's a history. That's our people's history. We never really were meant to fit in, or was it easy for us to fit in? Yet we kept going. But fine, let's still ride the fact that it's tough. I think real Judaism, and I think the truth of Judaism, and who am I to even pretend like I know what the truth is? But here's my thought, my little tiny, right. With all the humility that I can muster, is that it's meant to be holistic, and it's meant to. You're not one person when you go to shul, and you're another person behind closed doors. That's not the truth that we've been given. But unfortunately, people are people, and people are flawed. And so, yes, it's easy to look out there and say, oh, what did you hear what happened to that rabbi or that religious guy? He's religious, but look at what he did. And it's like, that's a real shame. It's a real shame. And it's especially a humongous shame when we're such a tiny people. So it sticks out. It's huge. When we have a few people who sort of don't walk the walk, it really hurts because, again, we believe as Jews that we are all family. We are all one soul. We're all a letter in the Torah. So what you do does affect me. I look at you and I don't see another person that's a part of my congregation or religion. I see a family member. And it is that big of a deal to me, and I think we've forgotten that. We forgot that we're family, and family is really annoying sometimes. And we say the things that really get to each other. And it's like, we get angrier with our family, but that's because we love them. And because we are so biologically connected, we forgot that. And I need to remind myself of that constantly. And but that's the journey of being in the physical world. And that is a lot of what Judaism talks about, how to elevate the physical world, how to constantly remind ourselves that we're more than just the body. And that's where all of the little observances, the little blessing I make before I eat something, just so that I don't shove it down my throat. I have a moment of intention. Mindfulness is so popular now. And I get it. It's like, oh, well, Moses told us about it way back when, right? We have that bite in the movie from Pesach Stadlin, who's like, he told us about the digital detox thousands of years ago. But now it's becoming so important because we are just so we're just craving it in such a desperate way. So I don't know. I that's just kind of where I'm at with it. And I hope that we can all sort of get inspired to be better versions of ourselves and represent Judaism or whatever religion we are, or we feel called to be, in a way that's truthful.
Okay. Interesting. I love hearing your comments about these things. So here's a question. Is it hard to keep kosher on the road? Are you having, how's that going?
I will just say, I mean, like if you want to eat meat all the time, like, yes, it's going to be tough to find kosher meat. That's always the thing.
Mhm.
But I will tell you that Walmart exists everywhere and they have fantastic salmon. So we have been surviving on fish and vegetables, and eggs are everywhere. And so a lot of this stuff, depending again on like your level of kashrut, but is pretty simple to find. Um, and then obviously keeping a kosher kitchen is like an internal job and is not that difficult because the
Right.
road is, we take our kitchen everywhere. And that's one thing that we don't have to worry about traveling around and having to do the kosher kitchen thing. But when we do get to areas that have like awesome Jewish communities with kosher meat, we get very excited and like we'll run to the local, kosher butcher and grab a little bit of meat for that Shabbat. But it's really not been difficult. It's really, really not been difficult. I think once you make a committed decision to do something, you sort of like, it's like a diet or a cleanse or just a way of life that's a little bit different. You're vegan now. It's like you find a way to make it happen and because it's meaningful. But this particularly has not been very hard at all. Not in America.
So come through Chicago on your way home and we'll have like a Shabbat in Chicago
Oh, I will email
with
you
meat.
after this.
Okay, yeah. One of the questions was about like how do you celebrate Shabbat and holidays while you're traveling?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
A lot of our and not to get too much into the COVID tangent, but because we just had a baby, is that a lot of what we were doing was not going to shul, which was really a beautiful challenge to us in my husband and my own personal observance and connection to Judaism because it had been so communal and I'd been learning from people and I'd been like eating with people when we were engaged. We were constantly hosted by other couples. And when we were just married, we would have people over and then COVID hit. And it was like, we're just not messing with this thing. So we did a lot of stuff, just the three of us and our baby. And it was really powerful. I remember the high holidays last year, we were home. My husband bought a shofar and he blew the shofar for us. And, we fasted and he did as much as he could. And made sure I had my prayer books and had, read up and made sure I did my studying beforehand, just so I really felt like I was prepared, because you yearn for that, like a sermon or what the words of the rabbi to continuously elevate you during the high holidays. And this was just us. Previously was in our home and now in the RV. So Shabbats can get a little lonely on the road. But they're special and they're different and it's all temporary. I mean, we're not going to be on the road forever. So we're sort of enjoying, the new squirrels as our outdoor neighbors and like a beautiful new backyard that we're not going to have for too much longer, and a front yard that's humongous because it's all around us. So we're really enjoying this.
good.
Yeah.
So we've been asking a lot of personal questions. So I'm going to ask another kind of personal question.
Yeah.
Because it's about money, so it's personal. But how did you fund the film? Like how did you find funding?
It's not even a very personal question. I think it's a very important
Money
question
is
for
always
any.
personal.
You're right.
Right,
You're right. I guess I will share
right,
whatever it is that you ask of me for the most part.
right.
I knew, to me, one, I didn't have money. So I'll just say that from a personal standpoint is I was a struggling artist in LA and living paycheck to paycheck. So like having money to make a film and having like, I've saved up was not a reality. So let that never stop anyone to make a piece of art, and let that be a reminder to myself always. But what I did do at first was reach out to a couple of friends who I knew could film a sort of a trailer, a spec. And I got a few pieces of footage together and I created a trailer before I even made the movie. Not the current trailer, that was after, but just just sample. And then I shopped it around. I sent it around to a bunch of friends in the industry before I even raised money. I thought maybe I'll raise like 10, 20 grand. I know that's a ton of money. Will people even pay? Let me first gut check this. I sent it out to friends who worked at A&E, who worked at Netflix, my writing mentors, other mentors, and they all said, this is really compelling. It's a very interesting topic. Go for it. At which point I threw that up on like a Kickstarter and it was called Juicer, still exists. It's a Jewish crowdfunding site. And I raised my first round of seed capital. I raised probably 10 grand, which 6 years ago was more than it is now. But also I wasn't looking to to hire a team all at once. I was really piecemealing it together. I was getting a few things here, a few things there, because it was a journey. I wasn't going to like take 2 months to shoot this, which is how a movie works. It was like, I'm going to make this over the course of, I don't know how long. So I would film a few days, save it on my drive, and then go through life and be like, okay, I'm going to set up a few more shoots and film that and film that. And that's how it went. And so I sort of like would shoot as I went, burn through the money eventually over a couple of years, raise another round. And I raised another round. I think that was another probably 5,000, which was phenomenal. And then I did a final push for post-production. And then by that point, I also had worked a job and saved some additional money to make sure that my editor could get paid. So I also put in some of my own savings. But all in all, I made this movie for a very small budget. I would say probably about $75,000, which nowadays is like really not very much to be able to make a feature film, let alone a documentary that includes travel. But when there's a will, there's a way. But I fundraised and asked for a lot of help and a lot of chutzpah because I really wanted to make this happen.
Okay, so it's great that you're showing at festivals, right?
Yeah.
Are you will it be screened anywhere else? Like is it a festival film or?
Yeah. We've been really blessed with the festival circuit. People are really loving it and passing it around and wanting it at their festival. So that's really exciting. I won't bore you with all of them, but on our website, AmericanBirthrightFilm.com, there's a screenings tab and they're all there. And we have probably a dozen this past year. And we have a few more at the top of next year as well. El Paso, Texas, didn't know they had a Jewish film festival. Really cool. I mean, it's just so many. There's like 200 Jewish film festivals. So it's been so awesome. We also did win an award at a not Jewish film festival, which was really cool, at Idlewild, which is my favorite town in California. And I won best documentary director, which was really awesome. So even just to get that sort of notice from a non-Jewish festival as well, that like, wow, that was quite the feat. It has been really special. And I wanted to do a film festival route for this film. I didn't see it as like a blockbuster. It's not. It's an indie, and it's a film festival type of film where you go and you talk and you maybe walk with some questions after and you think about it again. And I'm not saying that big blockbusters don't do that, but my hope was that this would generate conversation in smaller circles, in intimate environments where people are going to learn and to support Jewish causes. And so it's been really beautiful to screen for the Jewish Film Festival circuit. And hopefully we continue to do that. We also have workshops and private screenings where people have been reaching out saying, I have a group in Baltimore of a bunch of parents who are sort of concerned with this topic of interfaith marriage, and we would love to screen the movie and have a talk. So I've had a lot of, we have younger children, 18 to 25, that are like really in the space of carving out their Jewish identity. We'd love to have a conversation around the film and screen it. So we've also been facilitating that, which has been, again, very rewarding. And we'll see what happens after. What distribution lives beyond the Jewish Film Festival circuit, we're still walking with that question.
Okay. We have a few more questions.
Yeah.
So the next question is, do you step at different, this is about your RV life.
And I love it. Make a movie about that.
Right. I think that's your next.
Compelling.
So do you stop at different synagogues along the way? That's one of the questions.
We should, like, that would be the movie, right? Is that we do that. I'll tell you what, having a baby during COVID, and not really just during COVID, but like having a baby, my first one, was a lot. It was like very overwhelming. No one tells you how tired you get. So for me to stop anywhere on a journey that's like a 5-hour drive that we were doing every time we drove to get to the next state was not in the cards. But if we were in a Jewish community, we try to pop in somewhere. We try to at least see the community. Again, like I told you, we weren't praying with a congregation, purely just to sort of like, we have this baby, we don't have a local babysitter. There was a lot of all that. I won't let you into my, the logistics of our family, but it wasn't super easy to go to services. But we absolutely try to pop into Jewish communities where they existed and connected, just to sort of feel it out. Because who knows, a part of us was like, maybe people really like Nebraska and want to move here. Who knows? We like Nebraska a lot. We're not moving to Nebraska, but just in general, we were really open to maybe be inspired to be somewhere else. So we go to Nashville in a few weeks, and we're really excited to check out their local Jewish community. May not pop into a synagogue. We'll see. We'll see how we feel and how things are, but absolutely trying to feel it out and connect to the local community.
Okay, we have another question. Have you been facilitating any any discussions with teens? And I guess
Yeah.
how does the film resonate with teens who are just starting to?
Right. It's like, it doesn't seem like they'd be so intrigued by the marriage talk yet, but I talk about this often. I spoke to two different teenage groups through BBYO. So I was in BBYO as a teen, and I was flown out to their international conference last February, and I spoke to a whole room of teens and was like really, really surprised and thrilled and pleased to hear their feedback, to see their engagement. A bunch of the kids afterwards came up and talked to me, and they were like, this is really cool. Like, I'm really struggling with sort of like who to date, but also like where I want to be Jewishly. And I was like very impressed that they were thinking about that at 17, because I was not. And then I did a BBYO chat again in January of this year on Zoom. So it was like, it worked that they wanted to do it again. And we did like breakout rooms, and it was awesome. And I was, again, super, super impressed by the 25 teenagers that showed up to this Zoom event with me. So as much as I didn't think that this would be like my target demo, it's definitely a part of the demo that's inspired and intrigued. And I love that. And I'd love to continue having that conversation. I think if I was inspired more at that age, I may have made different decisions even sooner, which, would have been nice.
Okay, we still have a few more questions. So this is about Gal, and was she right on board with you, agreeable to have her life on film, or like
It's a
how did
good
that?
question.
Yeah,
No, like, wouldn't have that been like, everything would have been just so easy, and it was not easy. Like, looking back now, I kind of make it easy because, retrospect is just, it's simpler to talk about. Everything sort of makes sense and all the pieces fall into place. But no, as soon as I had the idea, and I remember exactly where I was in LA, I was parked in my car on the way to an audition, was like, what am I doing with my life? Talked to my writing mentor, told him the idea for the movie. And then I said, oh, wait, I have to ask my sister if she'll even do this. Oh man, she's going to say no. I called her, and I like tried to do my best, sort of like, this is going to be so great, and pitch it to her and sell her on it. And she listened and was like, this is really cool. It's a little private. Can I get back to you? And I was like, oh, I've lost her. Like, for sure, she's going to call
right.
me back and say no. She called me back the next day and said, Justin and I discussed it, and we really want to do this. We think it's a part of our relationship's purpose in the world to spark these conversations. And she says it at the end of the film. She said that was the point the whole time, is that it sparked the conversation. And that's the point, is that the decisions we make in our life have a bigger repercussion. And I think that's such a beautiful way to look at your relationship and your marriage, is that it's not just about the two of us. It's about what are we doing in the world, which now I'm really quoting my documentary, because Rabbi David Aaron says the very thing. Relationship, marriage, it's not just about the two of us. It's what is our impact in the world. And I think that's such a beautiful notion. So was she right on board? No, but she quickly got on board and was a really good sport, like a really good sport about it, as you can see.
Yeah, for sure. There's another question about, was your husband in the film industry when you met?
So he did a lot of film work, but he's a musician. He's a percussionist. So a lot of what he does is produce music stuff, which lends itself really beautifully to post-production, which is when I met him. We were editing this movie and like, God, just like breaking our heads over how to get this right. And when he came in, it's just such a great creative eye. And he was like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And then when it came to the score, the music, was our music supervisor and was the best. Yeah. I didn't just credit him there because he's my husband. I mean, he got the job because he already had a foot in the door, but he happens to be really talented. So but he also had done some film work, and it's something that he was passionate about. So when we aligned forces, it was like, great, your music know-how is fantastic. How about you also, since I can see how great you are at directing and overseeing, why don't we also do that here? And at the time I was working at a different company, and I brought him on to direct a couple pieces that I was producing. And so we had sort of like that time to test out the relationship in a working capacity.
Right.
And then when we launched our production company, we'd sort of already walked a couple different walks together. He directs, I produce, and then we write. And so we just said, let's do it, and let's do it ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Becky, what'd you leave on the cutting room floor? Anything?
So much.
Yeah.
So, oh, you know what I left, and it needs to be talked about because I miss it, but you don't miss it because cutting room floor stuff is difficult. And in writing, you call it kill your darlings, because it's like they're your darlings and but you got to kill them because they just don't help the story. One of the stops in Israel before we get to Haifa at the end of the movie is Tzfat, which is in the north, this like mystical spiritual city. Like who doesn't go to Tzfat and get super inspired to be spiritual and to grow? And it was an awesome 4.5 minute chunk of the movie that just like wasn't moving the story forward. It was really nice, but it sort of energy dropped and it was tough. We took a step back at like our final leg of editing and said, we love it. It's beautiful. It's inspiring, but we don't need it. Shop. And I miss it, but you wouldn't miss it. You wouldn't miss it. I mean, I will also say we had 150 hours of footage.
Right.
I mean, we could have made 100 movies, and we made a few before we got to this iteration. We made several movies before this ended up being, it's like sculpting. You sort of just start chiseling away at it, and then you have the one and you go, okay, I'm going to stop chiseling before I break it.
Where it breaks apart. Okay, so what's the next project?
I mean, I feel like now I have to make an RV movie. But so all jokes aside, Manifest Media, which is my husband and my production company, is developing some original stuff. We've been doing a lot of client work. So if anyone, and a lot of it is Jewish organizational content, plus a lot of other stuff too, but a lot of it was for the Jewish world, which was very wonderful to see that the Jewish world is like, we need content. We need it to be great. Social media is the new frontier, duh. And they would come to us. And so we continue to do that and welcome that. But we're also developing some original projects, which is very exciting. They're also spin-offs of great Jewish themes and characters. There's an Anne Frank piece we're working on. There's another piece we're working on around the idea of a get. And developing some other things. So God willing, soon we will have some great additional pieces. Maybe they won't be documentaries. Maybe we'll do some documentaries as well. Walking with that question too. I walk with a lot of questions.
Right.
Yeah. And we're open. You kind of never know when that idea just comes in and goes, no, this is what needs to be done. Because I thought I had a bunch of ideas. And when American Birthright came in, it was like nothing else mattered. So we're developing, we're working, we continue to push things forward. And sometimes something else comes in and like it hits. So we're also open.
Okay, so someone wrote a suggestion for your RV movie title, Jews on the Road.
Love it.
Okay, well, I think that is all the questions we have right now.
Easy questions.
Really, Becky, if you want to come back through Chicago, I'm sure we can find a way to host you or continue the conversation. And we look forward to your next project.
Thank you.
And wishing you a safe journey.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone that showed up and asked amazing questions. And to your time, Holy Sister Abby, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Hope to talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Bye.